The Satan Hunter by Thomas W. Wedge with Robert L. Powers. Chapter 1. Sean Sellers. Did Satan's demons cause a 16-year-old worshiper to brutally kill his parents? Sean Sellers says that's exactly what happened to him. He has been found guilty of those murders, as well as the death of a convenience store clerk. Today, at 17, he has been sentenced to die by lethal injection for those crimes. The tragedy of Sean Sellers, a handsome and bright young man, is perhaps the best known case involving the growing national problem of satanic worship. It is a story difficult to pinpoint because of alleged attempts by the nation's media to downplay stories about Satan worshipers in an attempt to prevent panic. I have been working as an investigator of the occult for nearly a dozen years. I was summoned by Sellers' defense attorneys to testify as an expert witness at the high school's students' murder trial in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, during the summer of 1986. Sellers granted me a lengthy, exclusive interview from his prison cell. He frankly discussed his relationship with the devil and how that friendship led to the deaths of 3 people, including Sean's mother and stepfather. Several months after Sean was convicted of these killings, he telephoned me one night and gave a detailed confession of his crimes. That confession is revealed at the end of this chapter. Sean gives every appearance of a typical, clean-cut, young Midwesterner. He's tall, slender, and well-groomed. Sean keeps his hair short and neatly combed. He wears no jewelry. He appears to be the epitome of all the American boy. In a television appearance from prison in McAlester, Oklahoma, on the nationally syndicated Oprah Winfrey Show, Sean spoke with seeming sincerity and a marked politeness. He failed to rise to the occasion as the talk show host attempted to discredit his words. She made little effort to conceal an apparent disgust with his actions. The young man's involvement with the occult and supernatural began when he was in the 3rd grade. It kept going from there, he told me calmly as we sat together in the Spartan barred interview room of a jail cell. Sean demonstrates intelligence. His speech patterns show no evidence of grammatical disasters. His dark eyes search out his interviewer. He says he has found God and that he has become born again. He speaks of remorse and how he hopes to put his life in order, to become an example to other young people, and to warn of the danger of involvement with the occult, the horrors that await those who dare to dabble with the unknown. As I got older, I became heavily involved in Dungeons and Dragons. D&D is a complicated game with conservatives and fundamentalist Christians often accused of being laced with heavy doses of Satanism. The game, its opponents claim, causes players to lose contact with reality as they become entranced with its imaginations, twists, and turns. Sellers admits that his ties to satanic worship gathered strength as the years passed. Interviewed by Oklahoma City news media after his arrest, he said that he would advise other people to stay away from Satanism and the occult. His advice: get involved with religion. He now professes a close relationship with God. Sellers was arrested following a telephone tip to police. When authorities searched his room, they uncovered copies of 3 books that he admitted using in satanic worship. They were the Satanic Bible by self-proclaimed high priest of the Church of Satan, Anton LaVey, the Satanic Rituals, also by LaVey, and another ritual volume called the Necronomicon. The books all are published in an expensive paperback editions by Avon Books of the of New York and have been steady sellers for nearly 2 decades. The Satanic Bible was first marketed in 1969 and has gone through at least 21 printings. As Sellers began to absorb these manuals, he intertwined his beliefs in Satanism with the study of martial arts, especially the ninja variation of that creed. During the interview, I asked Sean if he had ever sacrificed any animals. "No, because I love animals," he said. "But in being a Satanist," I argued, "blood sacrifices are required." Sean Sellers replied, "I use my own blood," he said, pointing to a scar on one of his arms. He adds that he had worked at a clinic and stole hypodermic needles and used those to extract his own blood. Involvement with the coven, where he says his coven name was the Eliminator, went much deeper than was brought out in court testimony during Sellers' trial. The young man had entered into a blood pact, a copy of which was introduced during his trial. "I renounce God, I renounce Christ, I will serve only Satan. To my enemies, death. To my friends, love. Hail Satan." The inscription was written in blood and signed by Sellers. When a Satanist renounces God and Christ, the renunciation of Christ is the more important of the two. In order to reach God, a Satanist believes he must go through his son. In a covenant initiation, one of the initial rituals demanded is the renunciation of Christ. A Satanist always believes in God. Satanism requires a mocking of the principles of Christianity, therefore, or thereby requiring that its adherents believe in God while rejecting all he represents. Another document uncovered during the trial was a note Sellers had written in a satanic alphabet, scribbled in his blood. When deciphered, the message said, "I am a son of Satan. Satan is forever my Lord." The initial pacts with Satan had been made. Sellers had pledged his body and mind to Satan. Sellers had claimed during initial questioning by police that he did not kill the convenience store clerk. He then blamed a companion for the slaying, while admitting that he had been present. He says that his friend asked him, "How can you be a Satanist and never have killed anyone?" For a long time and during the time of his trial, Sean asserted that he could not remember murdering his parents. "I wish I could remember if I really did it," he said. But that story changed. For several months, he was interviewed by Sylvia Tamarkin, Chicago-based reporter for People Weekly, and he told Tamarkin that he had denied the killing even to himself. In his trial, he was silent. His attorneys entered a plea of not guilty. He told them that he couldn't remember committing the crimes, but he told the lawyers of his infatuation with the devil. They told the court that Sellers' relationship with Satan had made him insane. The jury didn't buy his story. He was found guilty on all 3 counts. One juror was quoted by People as saying, "If that verdict saves one kid from Satanism or saves one other person from getting killed, then it's justified." After the trial, Sellers came to realize what he had done. "I'm having a hard time dealing with the guilt, but I have to tell the truth about what Satanism can do," he told Tamarkin. Sellers claims that he had been using amphetamines for a couple of days. At the time, his parents were slain. However, speed usually does not cause a person to become violent. Witnesses who saw Sellers come out of his parents' home after their murder said that he was as white as a ghost. They said he muttered, "My parents are dead." In my interview, I asked Sellers when he had last worshipped the devil. Police had discovered an altar in his home. On that altar rested an athame, a knife which is used in satanic rituals, as well as silver chalices. In my hours with the young man, I tried to ask him qualifying questions, answers to which normally be known only by a practicing devout Satan worshiper. He provided correct answers. "Why do you use silver chalices?" I asked. He didn't hesitate in his answer. Gold symbolizes the purity of Christianity, while silver is, in Satanism, the opposite of Christianity. He also had ceremonial swords and an old piece of carpet used as a prayer cloth. He possessed incense oils that he burned during worship. The elaborate altar was set up in his room. I last worshipped Satan the night before my parents were killed, he says. I asked him about his use of the pentagram, a 5-pointed star surrounded by a circle that is used by worshippers as protection against demons conjured during services. The star is inverted. The 2 upward points represent Satan and the Antichrist, while the 3 downward points signify the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, the members of the Christian Trinity. By having the 2 points on top, Satanists believe this signifies dominance of the devil over Christianity. The circle means protection is offered. In most cases, the pentagram is drawn on the floor, but covens often vary in their use of a pentagram. In Sean's case, he chose to draw the pentagram on his chest in his own blood. He added that he felt sorry for the demonic forces he was trying to summon. I scrubbed the pentagram from my chest, he says. I asked the demonic forces to enter my body and use me as they wished. When I was called by Sellers' defense attorney as an expert witness in his murder trial, I testified that I did not believe that he was in a coven by himself. I think there was more involvement than has been uncovered. When he washed off that pentagram, I believe he opened himself to a form of demon possession and not the Hollywood type. There's no spitting of green pea soup or the 360-degree twisting of the head. According to the Bible, one of the archangels who was cast out of heaven by God was Lucifer, another name for the devil or Satan. He was a top-ranking archangel. Because of his pride, he was sent away from heaven. 1/3 of the angel population at that time chose to follow Lucifer or Satan. When one discusses demons or dark forces, we refer to that 1/3 of the angel population who decided to follow Satan. Not knowing the exact size of the angel population, there can be no way of determining the size of the 1/3 who left. I believe that those who begin to dabble in Satanism and their conjurations and summons actually summon up the demonic forces. As time passes, Satan's worshippers study and gain more knowledge about their religion. Thus, they are able to call up more dangerous demonic forces. In Sean Sellers' case, I think that when he removed his protection, which was the pentagram, and prayed for the demonic forces to enter him, he called up forces that used him. For a long time, Sellers claimed not to remember killing his parents because of the influence of those forces. The jurors were not convinced. One said, "We thought he knew right from wrong." It has become common for those accused of murder to use the defense that they were under the influence of a drug such as heroin. By claiming diminished capacity, they think they should be found innocent by jurors. But when one enters a courtroom and pleads the defense that Sean Sellers attempted to use, testifying about spiritual warfare and demonic forces, jurors do not want to listen. They refuse to believe that such might be true. It seems apparent that Sean did not enter Satanism of his own accord. He was recruited. There are recruiters who look for susceptible persons. I testified during the Sellers trial that there is an organization called the Abbey, a society founded by Aleister Crowley in 1920. There is an Abbey in Oklahoma City, which I believe is a recruitment house for young people such as Sean. He told me that he possessed a ring which was given to him by a person who placed it on his finger. This man claimed to have been involved in the occult for approximately 18 months. Recruiters go to extensive lengths to find persons who might be interested in becoming involved. Sean was recruited through information gained from his girlfriend, a 15-year-old called, ironically, Angel. This girl was being educated by the other person to become a Satanist. She divulged information to the recruiter, who then was able to use that information in his recruiting of Sean. Recruiters will trick youngsters into joining by such methods as drawing a pentagram on their forehead or in the palm of their hand with a bar of soap. When this area is dampened, the recruiter then can apply cigarette ashes, causing the previously invisible pentagram to mysteriously appear. Recruiters did their homework on Sean. People who professed to be his friends went on the stand during his trial and testified against him. A young man who must be labeled an accomplice allegedly accompanied Sean when he went to the Circle K convenience store on March 1st, 1985. At Sean's trial, this person testified against Sean, claiming that Sellers had killed the clerk at the store. The witness also described how Sellers murdered his parents. Sean told me that he has accepted Jesus Christ as his Savior and that I am willing to accept the consequences of whatever I may have done, even if that means death by lethal injection. Sean says he will accept it. During our conversations, other topics were covered. Sean displayed considerable knowledge of the subject of Satanism. In addition to his collection of commercially available books, he had made his own Book of Shadows. Sean also was corresponding with a friend in Colorado, seeking a coven that he might join. He spoke of other teachers in the Oklahoma City area that are gone. They no longer can be found. He told me of the Enochian chain, the Enochian language. As I testified during Sean's trial, I realized this case was much more complicated than anyone realized. This was not an instance of a single young individual acting upon his own. It rather was a case of numerous individuals deeply involved, influencing a lonely, frustrated young man. Sean had no self-esteem. He was unquestionably led by a group that I believe still exists. It is a group that operates today in secret. It is putting other young people into peril. That group's membership is -1. Sean Sellers sits on death row in a maximum security prison, awaiting the court wrangling and appeals process that could ultimately lead to his execution once all avenues are exhausted. It is my hope that through the information I am providing in the pages of this book, I can prevent another Sean Sellers case from occurring, that I can keep another youngster from being enticed into the cruel, deadly world of Satanism. In one of Sean's writings, he says, "Right now, I need some blood. I've got a craving for blood. I don't work at the clinic anymore. Maybe I can buy some from the hospital. I think I'll try. Man, I want to drink blood so badly." In another excerpt from his writings, he talks about a place in Oklahoma City called the Abbey. "It is a school," Sean wrote, "a cult for magic. I know a guy there who's going to teach me magic." Sean told me that he knows a girl who is receiving instructions from the Abbey, but he refused to give me its location. "There also are people at the school who wish to get introduced," he wrote. "I know about another group, and I know where they meet. I'm going to find them out there pretty soon." Sean was writing about covens. He discussed the girl who introduced him to the man who turned over his ring to Sean. Through her interrogation of Sean, the girl obtained information about Sean, which she gave to the teacher in his school for magic. One of the people who testified for the prosecution in the Sellers trial claimed to have been a wizard, which in the Satanic Dictionary is defined as a male witch. He told the jury that he had lied so many times that he wanted to take the stand and tell the truth. He wore a cross in one of his pierced ears. He said that he had made up different stories to recruit people. He had worked as a security guard at showings of the popular cult film, The Rocky Horror Picture Show, which has attracted hundreds of thousands of costumed fans to midnight shows and theaters across the country for the past decade. What better place could there be for a recruiter working for Sean than at theaters showing this film? This young man who slipped his ring onto Sean's finger claimed that he was able to teach Sean magical powers and had many claims about Satanism. When he testified, he spoke of his lies about all this. I think he was exactly who he said he was. He was using recruiting techniques that are common for Satan's followers. Ironically, when Sean was being questioned by police concerning the deaths of his parents, an anonymous phone call was received at police headquarters. The caller told authorities that Sean had committed the murder at the Circle K store. The individual who turned state's evidence and is now a free man allegedly had been Sean's best friend. According to Sean, the man actually was an accomplice to the crime at the convenience store. When this man went to the police, he told him that Sean had confessed details in the murder of the Circle K employee and then told him fully about how he, Sean, had slain his parents. The question must be raised as to why this informant waited for 6 months after the Circle K murder before going to authorities to tell them about Sellers' alleged confessions. In writings, Sean composed before his parents' deaths. He made an obvious cry for help. Sean's mother had gone to a church and showed the minister the materials about Satanism that she had found in Sean's room. She was told that she had no right to meddle in Sean's affairs and that she should return the materials to her son. Sean's IQ is 118. Psychologists offered varying testimony on his state of mind. Psychologist Martin Kremski said, if Sean killed his parents, his body acted, but his mind registered nothing. Physically, he was acting in an integrated manner. Mentally, he was not aware, not appreciating, not registering what was happening. In other words, Sean Sellers was not in total control of his own mind. He was worshiping Satan. When he went before the altar that night before he killed his parents, he had no protection on him. He invited demonic forces to come into his body. They did. Those forces took control of him. Few, if any, secular psychologists would be willing to testify in a court trial and admit that they believe in demonic forces. That carries this case, as well as many others, into the realm of religion. Anyone who believes in God must, it follows, believe in Satan. And if one believes in Satan, then that person must believe in fallen angels. Fallen angels are the demonic forces. There's no problem for most people when talking about guardian angels. But when demons or fallen angels are mentioned, then there's a problem. Sean claimed to have loved his parents. They had the usual up and down relationship that is common to all of us. But there is no evidence anywhere in Sean's writings that he had an opinion of his parents that would cause him to hate them enough to kill them. Never does Sean indicate that he hated his parents. He had the normal, everyday problems common to a 16-year-old and his parents. Here is a letter Sean wrote to his parents. This letter was taken from a clipboard in his parents' living room. Dear Mom and Dad, I may be dumb, but I thought about it and I'm just going to have to go for it. I took everything I could find that was mine, except for the bed and Tuffy. I'll be by tomorrow or so to get them. I didn't leave because I don't love you or because I'm mad at you, but because I want to try it on my own for a change. I don't want it to be as if I was kicked out or as if I have run away. I'd still like to visit and keep in touch, but if that answer is no, I understand. I'll be back or I'll be at work until 11 o'clock, and then I've got some things to organize. Since I've already driven the pickup around, I went ahead and took it to work. I'll see you tomorrow and explain how I'm planning on working things out. Love always, Sean. What happens when young people get involved in Satanism? When they obtain a copy of the Satanic Bible? These are writings from Sean. In the Satanic Bible, there are 4 books: the Book of Satan, the Book of Lucifer, the Book of Belial, and the Book of Leviathan. Each name is a power of hell. Before crown princes of hell: Satan, Hebrew, adversary, opposite accuser, Lord of the flies, Inferno, and represents the south. Lucifer, which is Roman, the bringer of light, enlightenment, the morning star, and represents the east. Sean mentioned that he is Hebrew, without a master, and independent, and he is something of the earth and represents the north. Leviathan, Each name represents a different element and a different destination: earth, water, fire, air, east, west, south, and north. In Satanism, one's birthday is the most important holiday of the year. Walpurg is the night celebrated on the eve of May 1st, Halloween, or rather Happy Halloween. The summer solstice, which is June, the winter equinox, which is in December, the spring equinox in March, and the autumn equinox in September. God has sex with chickens. All of these holidays are around the 21st or the 22nd of decided months, says Sellers. During each holiday, a witch's power is increased for that night. Also, once a year, there is a black mass in which you have the biggest meeting of that year. I think this is when humans may be sacrificed. If you don't outrage a lot of people, then the holiday is no good. Sacrificed people are those people who beat their wives, molest children, kick their dogs, etc. We do the world a favor by getting rid of them. After all, people like this have no right to live anyway. Among witches and Satanists, suicide is an ultimate no-no, says Sellers. Sean goes on to speak about the white witches, only true powers, which are those used to heal others. Black magic is the only way, he writes. To become a witch, you have to be devoted to Satan and witchcraft. Remember, this is black magic. This is black magic. And to get that power which you so crave, Lucifer is the only way. When you make up your mind for good, I'll send you some stuff to really get started. I don't think you really understand what worshiping Satan means. Perhaps these will help you. These are the 9 satanic statements, says Sellers. Satan represents indulgence instead of abstinence. Satan represents vital existence instead of spiritual pipe dreams. Satan represents undefiled wisdom instead of hypocritical self-deceit. Satan represents kindness to those who deserve it instead of love wasted on ingrates. Satan represents vengeance instead of turning the other cheek. Satan represents responsibility to the responsible instead of concern for psychic vampires. Satan represents man as just another animal, sometimes better, more often worse than those that walk on all fours, who, because of his divine spiritual and intellectual development, have become the most vicious animals of all. Satan represents all of the so-called sins, as they all lead to physical, mental, or emotional gratification. Lastly, Satan has been the best friend the church has ever had, as he has kept it in business all these years. This material was copied from the Satanic Bible, page 25, copyright 1969 by Anton LaVey. Look over these and reread them until you understand each one of them, says Sellers. If you agree with them, then you'll be ready to devote. If you don't agree, then witchcraft isn't for you. After all, it's wonderful. You wouldn't believe how it really feels. Write down info and burn. Go over them, as he continues to write, and maybe you'll see what I mean. I wish I could talk to you and tell you about some of this stuff. But until you are sure you want to get as deep into this as I am, you're just going to have to wait. Last night during my prayers, I cut the hell out of myself with a knife. It cut pretty deep. You can even see the meat between the skin, but blood never ran from it. Now, is that weird? Pretty soon, I think I'll be able to encounter a demon, and I might be able to get my new name. Later on, I might be able to tell you about Melissa. She's so neat. Write me back really soon, like today, so I can get you more things. I haven't got your letter, so I've sent these 2. Whatever you want to know, ask me and I'll try to find out. Remember not to tell anyone about all of this. Christians seem to look down upon Satanists for some reason. I wonder why. Yes, I may be becoming evil, but I'm proud of it. All of this may never change me, so don't start worrying. I've just got a new outlook on life, and it says, Hail Satan. The totally evil is still lovable. Signed, Sean. In another letter, talking about a trip Sean plans to make, he writes, "Probably on the first night we'll make our sacrifice and hold our ritual of undertaking of the job which I am going to explain. In the book of the Satanic Rituals, Mr. LaVey said that we have just come out of the world of an age of ice in which God is above. Now the age of fire is upon us. The ages of fire and ice rotate every 1,000 years or so, and the new age of the fire started in 1966. That is why the Satanic Church was built. An age of fire. God is beneath and Satan is above. There was a child born in 1966. He was 18 in 1984. And in the year 2002, he will rise to power. This child may be the Antichrist, the son of Satan himself. If he isn't, then he still is someone who will have very much power. I have been given the option to help Lucifer rise to power, helping Satanism become the dominant religion on earth. One Satanist equals 10 Christians in power. Can you imagine a world dominated with our kind? If I accept this job, I will have more power than you can imagine. I want you to help me. Be my partner. If you do, when we die, we shall be rulers of supreme power under the very few, over nearly all in hell. Will you join me in my task? Think about it. P.S. Included is the most powerful symbols of Satan, a pentagram. In another letter, God's name is Jehovah. Our God's name is Satan. But our God is just a little like a president or teacher. While Satan has many names, Lucifer is probably the most known. Besides Satan, I am going to warn you that you'll suffer the consequences when spelling Satan. Always use a big S. Remember, in order to get power from Satan, you must earn his respect and prove yourself to him. Satan rules the earth today. Evil, Sean. Signed off. P.S. I love you like a brother, but not like a sister. On November 13th, 1986, Sean Sellers called me collect from McAllister Prison death row. This is the story he told me on the store clerk's murder. Sean and his friend Richard were at Sean's house. Sean's cousin was there. They performed a lust ritual for Richard outside. They then went back into the house and started talking about killing Tracy's father. Tracy is Richard's girlfriend, who is now his wife. Sean said, "It's too bad we don't have a gun." Richard then obtained his grandfather's revolver as well as an old .22 caliber rifle. They found shells for both, Sean added. He said they had planned on driving to a Circle K store to rob and kill the person who was cashier there. The man who worked at the Circle K store had refused to sell beer to Sean and Richard on a previous night. The employee at the store also had allegedly flirted with Tracy when she purchased tampons. After robbing the store and murdering the employee, they planned to go to Tracy's house and knock out Jeremiah and kill her parents. Before leaving the house, Sean told me, we dedicated the next few hours to Satan. They left the house. In their car, they prayed to Satan to give Sean strength to take the sacrifice using incantation. I will not say the name of this incantation, but it's written in here. I asked Sean what this meant. He said Melissa, who was involved in the occult and Satanism, taught him that this incantation involved all his demons. He said this incantation opened the portal holes for all the demonic forces. Sean said that when they arrived at the Circle K, they talked to the clerk for almost an hour. Richard lured him outside and had the man look at the clutch on the car. Richard and the employee compared clutches on their cars. Sean said Richard showed the man his stereo, trying to distract him. Richard and the man went back inside. Sean was in the passenger seat of Richard's car, sitting on a .357 Magnum revolver. Richard said, "Okay," and Sean walked around to the dark side of the store. I thought I had lost my nerve, Sean said. Sean walked into the store. I will never forget how I felt, he said. I was calm. There was no hate, only pure evil. Sean said, I had felt like this before, but never like that night. Richard had the employee distracted in the back of the store. The clerk was behind the counter with his eyes on Richard. He was drinking a cup of coffee. Sean said, I picked up the gun, raised it, and fired. I missed him. He dropped his coffee, raised his hand up about elbow height, and started saying, Okay, man, all right. He was terrified. Sean said the man started to go to the cash register. I kept the gun on him, he added. Sean continued, I looked at him and he realized that I was going to kill him. He knew us and thought we were going to rob him. He could turn us in. Then Sean said that the employee looked in Sean's eyes. He looked into my eyes and saw that I was going to kill him. At this point, Richard walked forward from the back of the store. The clerk started to run toward the restroom. He slipped and fell. I lowered the gun and fired again. That was the second shot. The man kind of screamed. I thought I hit him. He got back up and kept running in the direction he had been going. Richard got in his way. He was ducking down, bent over and ran backwards toward the cash register. Richard crossed behind me and I went behind there around where the man had fallen. He then ran back towards me. When he looked up, he saw me. I was right up on him, and Richard said, Don't do it. I fired and the guy fell. Blood went everywhere. The first shot missed. The second shot hit him in the area of the neck. The third shot hit him in the side. I turned around. Richard was draped over the counter, trying to figure out which button to push to open the cash register. I said, Go, go. He took off, running out the door. Sean said he ran behind Richard and he got in the car and drove away. We had wasted too many bullets at the Circle K, so we didn't go to Tracy's house because we thought the gun could be easily traced back to us. When I asked Sean if the man at the Circle K was a human sacrifice, Sean answered, The man at the Circle K, in technical terms, was a sacrifice to Satan. Sean added that the next morning, I didn't remember what had been done, but Richard did, and I wasn't sure. The night before, we had wiped off the gun and put it back in the case where Richard's grandfather had kept it. Richard took the 2 bullets not used and did something with them. I took the 3 empty shells and went in Richard's backyard where I buried them. Sean then said he stayed at Richard's house all night. We talked about what had happened. We laughed about it because the poor guy was terrified. He never suspected being killed. Sean said he went on about his normal business the next day. He and Richard drove past the Circle K store and saw a lot of cop cars. They drove on to another Circle K outlet and inquired what had happened. They were told that a man had been shot to death. At that point, Sean said he kind of remembered going to the Circle K, and I was thinking, wow, we were there right before it happened. This guy was killed. The two went about their normal activities. Richard was charged with being an accessory to the murder, but when he turned state's evidence, he was given several years probation. That killing occurred September 8th, 1985. Sean's mother and stepfather were killed on March 5th, 1986. His mother was Vanda Maxine Belifato, age 32. His stepfather was Paul Leon Belifato, age 43. Both were found shot to death in their waterbed at their duplex, 7139 Northwest 115th Street in Oklahoma City. Sean said, I worshiped that night at my altar, which was set up against the wall facing my mother and dad's bedroom. I remember performing a ritual, summoning the demons, asking them to enter my body. He ended the ritual and went to bed. From that point, it was sort of like a dream. I got out of my bed, wearing my black underwear. I had the gun in my room. It was a .44 Magnum. I laid a towel down in the hall along with the holster without the gun in it. He said he walked down into the bedroom and I shot him. I asked him, who did you shoot? My dad. I shot him in the head. I pulled the trigger. I then lifted the gun a couple of inches and pulled the trigger again. My mother raised her head a little bit, So I fired again. I then walked out of the room and put the gun in the holster and wrapped it in the towel. I took a shower, came out, and got dressed. When I did my ritual, I put on a pair of black underwear and a black hooded cape. After my shower, I went back into my mom and dad's bedroom and turned the light on and looked at them. I was very proud of myself. I kind of laughed and I was very calm at all times, he said. I felt really good. I felt like a big burden had just been lifted off my shoulders because they had interfered with my girl and with my practice of Satanism. Sean then said that he put on his coat, got the gun and bullets. He had wiped off prints in the house. He went to his pickup truck and drove around, finally going to a friend's home, Richard. Richard came out and I told him that my mom and dad were dead. Richard said, "You did it?" And I said, "Yes." Richard laughed and said, "Good." Sean said that his friend got real cold. He was ecstatic about it. He said they went back into the house, then returned to turn off the lights in Richard's car. When they went back to the house, Richard wanted details about the murders. Sean said Richard told him that he had dreamed about Sean's actions. He told me how my father was lying in bed and where I was standing. He was accurate. At this point, it got foggy and I can't remember what was said. He said he obtained his briefcase from the pickup. He said the briefcase contained all my satanic things, including the Book of Shadows, Satanic Bible, the Necronomicon, etc. I then spent the night at Richard's home. The next morning I got up like nothing was wrong because I had overslept. I was late for school, he said. He drove back to his parents' home to get a note from his parents. He found them and my reaction was like, wow. When I first saw them, it was like something inside of me switched on and I freaked out and started crying. I yelled and ran out the door and ran next door and had them call an ambulance. Continuing. He said Richard pushed him outside of the house, where he tripped and fell over a bush. I just started crying. He said that Tracy, Richard's girlfriend, had came over and put her arms around him. A man who lived across the street arrived. At this point in the conversation, I asked Sean whether on the night he shot his parents, he was wearing a pentagram or any sort of protection from demons. He responded, "No." "Did you ask the demons to come into you?" I asked him, "Were they present?" He answered, "Every time I would ask demons to enter me, I would feel chilled and my chest would expand," he said. The demon was called, I won't say the name. I asked where the name came from. He said that when he had first begun to invoke demons, it came to me. "Have you ever seen them?" I asked. He said no, but he said the demons had spoken to him. Once, when he was taking a vocabulary test at school, he had not studied. I made a 98 and I hadn't studied at all. Later, I received a phone call from Sylvia Tamarkin, Chicago bureau reporter for People Weekly, who told me she had received a call from Sean and that he had confessed to the Circle K killing, as well as the murder of his mother and stepfather. Sean told her that he committed the murder because he had broken every one of the 10 commandments except for murder. He also said that he had been on speed for 3 days. Most of his report to Tamarkin coincided with the information he gave me. What I'm going to read next is a letter from Sean Sellers as he sat on death row. My dear friends, I sit here at the steel desk in a cell on death row in Oklahoma. I am 17 years old. When I close my eyes, I imagine the faces of all who hear this letter. I see faces just like mine less than a year ago. Faces full of confusion and often pain. Faces searching for something. I was there too. I was looking for a place to fit in just like you. I found that place before an altar of Satan. I let an interest in Dungeons and Dragons become an obsession that later led me into Satanism. I performed rituals covered in blood, inviting demons to enter my body. I drank blood, sometimes mixed with wine and urine, and began taking drugs. I thought I had at last found what I was looking for. I was wrong. Now, as a result of all I did in Satanism, I am condemned to die. My friends, I am not an adult. I'm a teenager. I know what it's like out there, and very often it's not easy. But look where I am. It can always get worse. Many people can tell you many things, but it's your decision to listen. I pray you will listen to me. I am just not a speaker on a platform. I am not a preacher, but I am a teenager. I followed the ways of society, the ways of uncaring, of immorality, of rebellion. I looked to drugs, alcohol, and Satanism for answers to my problems. I never just stopped to look around me. Walk outside and look at the sky, at the trees, the ground, the flowers. Just look around you and see the clouds, the birds, the sunshine. Can't you see the awesome love of the one who created all of this for you? You know, drugs, alcohol, and the occult, that all seems too cool. Are you too cool to see that Jesus loves you? I was. And now, where am I? No, my friends, drugs, alcohol, and the occult, all that trash, they're not answers to problems. Every day, teens kill themselves because everyone around them was too cool to tell them about Jesus, or because they also turn to these for answers instead of turning to the one and only real true answer. All these are not answers. They're only more problems disguised as answers. Jesus is the only answer. Where are you headed? When people look at you, what do they see? Do they see a person too cool to stop and talk to about their problems? Do they see a person full of rebellion? If they do, you could end up as I have. Or do they see a person who really cares? A person who is really cool? I never knew what it was to live until someone told me I had to die. What will it take for you? You could make such a difference in your own life. You could make such a difference to others. Listen to me. You can see where I am. I followed the ways of society. I fell into the traps of the devil. Make a stand in your life. Learn to care for one another. Learn to love one another and teach others to do the same. Jesus is the only way. I know. He loves you more than you can ever imagine. Won't you just give him a fair chance in your life? Just give Jesus a fair chance in your life. There are people who care. Never think that no one cares, because I do. I care because I love you. I love you because Jesus loves you. And if you're good enough for him, then you're good enough for me. It took a long time to learn for me to say these words. How long will it take you? I had to go through hell to learn something so simple. Will you let me teach you? I love you, my friends. Forever in Christ, Sean. About this letter. Sean wrote this personal letter to Tom Wedge to read to the many thousands of young adults he speaks to across the United States. Here signed, Sean Sellers, 156641, P.O. Box 97, McAlester, Oklahoma, 74501.